Welcome back to another episode of Virginia Wine and Song, the the YouTube channel where we pair a piece of classic music with some Virginia wine or wine from a particular Virginia winery. I'm going to do a special video. It's been a while since I've done a special non-wine and non-music video, just because I like to, mix it up a little bit and do things a little differently. Several months ago, I posted a couple videos on my favorite underrated movies of the 70s and then my favorite underrated movies of the 80s on physical media because I like CDs and I like albums. I also like DVDs and Blu-rays of movies. I believe in physical media. I really think that streaming is just, no offense to people who like to stream. I actually stream sometimes myself. Sometimes if you just want a lot of variety, streaming is great, but if you really adore a certain album or movie, you probably want to get it on DVD or Blu-ray. If you've got a device that plays DVDs and Blu-rays, and they still sell them. They still sell Blu-ray players. Blu-ray players play both Blu-rays and DVDs. You can probably buy a DVD player for like, $30 now if you want to. But why would you want to get a DVD player when you can get a Blu-ray player for, maybe $30 more? So anyway, highly recommend getting a Blu-ray player to play Blu-rays and DVDs and also CDs. You can play CDs and Blu-ray players. So I'm going to go through these. I'm going to try to be very quick because they're 10 movies. Just like I had in my other list, 10 movies that I consider to be kind of overlooked, underrated, long forgotten, however you want to describe it. And these cover a whole bunch of genres. I'm going to go through a couple of different genres, and I just picked out from my shelf the movies. They're not necessarily my favorite movies of the 90s. They're more like movies that I think are kind of forgotten about. Of course, I like all these movies, or else I wouldn't have them in my collection. But, if you want to name the best movies of the 90s, that's going to be a totally different list. This is a list of what I consider to be underrated, overlooked, long forgotten movies of the 90s. And I'm going to start from 1990 and work all the way up to 1999. I think I have a movie for I don't have a movie for every year. There are a couple of years where I have several movies, and there are other years where I don't have any movies. So not every year of the 90s is going to be represented, but it's still a good spread, I think. We've got early and mid and late 90s represented here on this list, or on the stack here. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly, give a little bit of synopsis about the movie, and then we'll try to move fast on this, okay? 1990, my pick for 1990 is Joe versus the Volcano. This is the first of 3 movies that Tom Hanks did with Meg Ryan. The others, of course, being Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, which are also good movies. But this movie, I think, is a lot deeper than those other movies. The other movies are more pure romantic comedies, really good romantic comedies, but they're kind of more light. This is, on the surface, a very light movie about a guy who really is kind of a hypochondriac, and he's depressed. He has a really horrible job in New York City, or Long Island City, I should say. And he gets an offer to be a hero to an island tribe by, jumping into a volcano. And along the way, when he goes through this kind of odyssey, Homer's Odyssey type thing, he meets some women. And the 3 major women in this movie are all played by Meg Ryan, and they're 3 totally different characters. She really calls on her different acting styles for her 3 characters. And she's great at all 3 of them. I think this movie is much maligned. I think it's gotten a cult following through the years. When it first came out, people really did not like it. A lot of critics liked it. Roger Ebert loved it, but some critics didn't care for it. A lot of audience stayed away. The title was kind of silly. The trailers were really kind of silly too. I remember seeing the trailer for this and thinking, that looks like a really dumb movie. But when I saw it in the theater, I was thinking, wow, that movie was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be. And it really is. I mean, John Patrick Shanley wrote and directed this movie. He also wrote Moonstruck from a couple of years earlier. And the moon actually is featured prominently in this movie. He's very much affected by the moon, apparently. And as you can tell from the cover, the moon is on here. There's a sequence where Tom Hanks is kind of out to sea. I won't spoil the movie for you, but the moon, he sees the moon come up, and I don't know what to say. It's just a beautiful movie. It's well directed. It's funny. It's got a lot to say about the human condition and what makes relationships work, and how to enjoy life, even if your life is kind of, you feel it's meaningless, how to enjoy it. It's almost got it's a wonderful life thing going on in it. So anyway, I really like this movie, highly enjoyable. Check out Joe versus the Volcano, 1990. That's on Blu-ray, by the way. I think this would be a great selection to be a Criterion pick one of these days. Maybe it will, but for now, it's on Blu-ray. 1991, the next movie I'm going to pick is from 91, and this movie is called The Man and the Moon. Not to be confused with The Man on the Moon. The Man on the Moon was the movie that was made, I think, in 1999 with Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman. This is a different movie. This is The Man in the Moon. And this has got, this is basically a love story that takes place in the 50s, in the late 50s in Louisiana. It's a period piece, but it's basically about puppy love. I shouldn't call it puppy love. The first crush that a young, I think she's supposed to be 12 years old in this movie. This 12-year-old girl kind of develops a mad crush on this neighbor who moves in next door, the son of a farmer who moves in next door. And everything she goes through. Then her older sister ends up falling for the guy too. It's such a it's a tearjerker. It is such an elegant movie. It's directed by Robert Mulligan. Robert Mulligan he didn't direct a lot of movies, but the movies that he did direct, I think, are just really just emotionally wrenching movies. Movies like To Kill a Mockingbird and Summer of 40, I think it was called Summer of 42. Summer 41, Summer 42, the movie another movie kind of about first love. And he also directed Same Time Next Year, which I had on my list from great, underrated movies of the 70s. So and he even directed a horror movie called The Other, not The Others, but The Other, that came out like in 1972 or so. A really interesting period folk horror movie. But this is a boo-hooer, really. I mean, it's got Sam Waterston in it and Tess Harper. They play the parents, and they're also kind of struggling. It's not set during the Depression. It's set during the late 50s, but he's a farmer. He's trying to get his farm working, and like I said, it's rural Louisiana. Beautifully, great atmosphere in this movie, and I really want to give a plug out to Reese Witherspoon. I believe this was her first movie. And you could tell from watching this movie that she was going to be star. I saw this movie in the theater when it came out, and I thought, wow, she really left an impression. She plays this precocious 12-year-old, and she's like a typical 12-year-old, no matter what the decade, but it happens to be the late 50s. And then her older sister is so sensitive to her feelings in this. I don't want to spoil the surprises. It is just a gem. So Man in the Moon, directed by Robert Mulligan, 1991. We're going to continue with 91. I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit more here. I just talk about these movies, because they're real gems. I actually rewatched all of these before I shot this video because it's been a while since I watched these. This is Hear My Song. This is also from 1991. And this is a really hard to find movie. It's available on DVD. I got it on Amazon. Another one that I think really should be on Criterion. It's got Adrian Dunbar, who is, he was an Irish actor. Is an Irish actor. He was in a couple of movies in the early 90s. He was in The Crying Game. He played a really bad guy in that movie. He's a good guy in this movie. He plays the owner of this pub in London, his thing is he books artists that pretend to be other artists. And the movie opens with him booking this guy named Frank Sinatra. Frank spelled with a C. So it's not the real Frank Sinatra, but that's his big shtick. He books these, not cover artists, but people who basically pretend to be really famous artists or musicians. And Joseph Locke was a really well-known tenor in the UK back in the 60s who fled the UK for Ireland because of back taxes. So he tries to find Joseph Locke because he books a look-alike or a fake Joseph Locke, and that kind of destroys his relationship with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's mother. So he's really distraught. He said, I'm going to go find the real guy, the real Joseph Locke, not this phony who I hired for my pub. So he goes to Ireland to reconnect with a friend, and they search for Joseph Locke. Joseph Locke is played by Ned Beatty, and I think it's, if not Ned Beatty's best performance, one of his best performances. He has an Irish brogue in this. I think Ned Beatty his family was from Ireland initially. So, he does a brogue very well. And just the journey that they go on when he tries to convince the real Joseph Locke to come back to London with him, even though he's wanted for paying taxes and he's a criminal, really. What happens? This journey, again, another movie about a journey, just like Joe versus the Volcano. This countryside in this, the film, the way it's filmed, Ireland looks just absolutely gorgeous, and I've never been to Ireland, but when you see this movie and some of the other movies that were made, that the Irish movies that like The Commitments and stuff like that. Well, I mean, maybe not The Commitments, because that's more like Dublin, that's more urban. This came out the same year as The Commitments. This has got both urban in London, but also a rural thing going on, and it goes in deep into what I call the eccentric villager genre. And that started with Local Hero in 1983, the movie about the guy from the oil company that goes to Scotland to try to buy up land. That movie, Local Hero, is on Criterion. This one really should be on Criterion too. It's just a gem. I'm using that term a lot now, gem. It's just a real fine. Check it out. It's a great movie to watch around St. Patrick's Day too. Hear My Song. Okay, we're going to move up to 1992 now. This is Bob Roberts, and this was written, directed, and starred Tim Robbins as this folk singer / politician. He's running for either, I can't remember if it's Senate or Congress in the state of Pennsylvania. And he's a right-winger. And Tim Robbins is a well-known liberal. He's in real life, Tim Robbins is a Democrat, but he plays a real grassroots, kind of a Make America Great Again type before that was even a term. And he's running for office in the state of Pennsylvania. And the movie is shot as a documentary. It's basically a fake documentary that kind of follows him on his campaign throughout the state of Pennsylvania, which is sort of like a microcosm for the rest of the United States. He goes into rural parts of the state, and then he goes into urban parts of the state, and he tries to convince these residents of the state to vote for him, and not the socialist liberal that's running against him. And it's got a lot of Tim Robbins' friends in it. Susan Sarandon, who he was involved with at the time, is in this movie. Peter Gallagher, who he would work with. He worked with Peter Gallagher in The Player. And I guess he was good friends with Peter Gallagher, and it's got John Cusack is in this. So a lot of his own friends are in this movie. Alan Rickman is in this movie. Alan Rickman plays this real shady guy who has connections with the Iran-Contras scandal from the Reagan era, and he plays this typical, shady politician. You could be right wing or left wing. There's shady politicians everywhere, and he plays a great one, Alan Rickman. So. Really fun movie. Tim Robbins actually wrote the songs on this. He plays the guitar and he writes the songs or wrote the songs, and they're sort of like spoofs of Bob Dylan songs. In fact, he even has a music video in this movie where he kind of mimics the music video that Bob Dylan had for can't even remember the name of the song, where he's holding up the title cards. Jesus. And I thought I knew Bob Dylan, but the song where he's holding up the title cards. He's got a video that he shoots in this just like that. And that's going to drive me crazy because I can't think of the name of it. Hold on, let me get my Bob Dylan CDs out because I don't like drawing blanks like this. I know I think it's from Blonde on Blonde. Let me pull it out here. Is it Rainy Day Women, number 12 and 35? 12 and 35? Oh, no, it's not. It's from Bringing It All Back Home. Okay, so I am bringing a little music into this. Bringing It All Back Home. I think it's from that album. Yeah, Subterranean Homesick Blues, okay? That's the video that he shot with the title cards, and that's what's spoofed in Bob Roberts. So anyway, and by the way, this is a great record, Bringing It All Back Home by Bob Dylan. And Bob Roberts, and it takes a liberal to make a satire like this, and he does really well. And this is right around the time Tim Robbins was becoming very popular, because he had The Player, and then he did Shortcuts, then of course he did Shawshank Redemption, and he was rather popular in the early '90s. And great director too. He's directed a couple other movies, so his directing style is he learned a lot from Robert Altman apparently. Okay, so we're going to move on to 1996. I got to move quicker because I think my battery is going to die. This is 1996. This is Flirting with Disaster. I'm going to try to go really, really fast now, even though I could talk about this movie for hours. This is, I think, the funniest movie of the 90s. It got a good release. It played pretty well in art house theaters in 1996. It's got a great cast. It's basically about this really neurotic guy, played by Ben Stiller, who's adopted. and his his adoptive parents are played by Mary Tyler Moore and George Siegel, and they're also neurotic New Yorker types. But he wants to find his real parents. So he embarks on another odyssey. I don't know what this is. I must like movies about odysseys. He goes on this cross-country odyssey with his wife, played by Patricia Arquette, and the adoption agency. She's studying to be a psychiatrist. She's played by Tia Leone, one of her first movies, by the way. And they're all funny. All these people in this movie. This was a movie where I consider to be kind of the passing of the torch from the older generation of comedians, which include Alan Alda, Mary Tyler Moore, George Siegel, Lily Tomlin, to the new generation, which is Ben Stiller, Patricia Arquette, Tia Leone. Of course, Patricia Arquette and Tia Leone, they made dramas as well, but they have very good comic timing in this. Patricia Arquette is kind of the center of the storm. There's a lot of mischief in this movie, a lot of screwball things going on in here. It's directed by David O. Russell. It was his second movie, and of course David O. Russell would later go on to make Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle and some of these other movies, but this was only his second movie. And I think it's like a Preston Sturges movie. It builds up. It builds it's got this rhythm, almost like a jazz piece. And it starts off there's a lot of screaming, and it may remind people of like a Woody Allen movie, just a lot of neurotic characters and all this, analytical stuff. But then as the story builds and they go from one place to another on a cross-country trip, more characters are introduced, and it creates this incredible climax at this house that's Alan Alda's house, Alan Alda and Lily Tomlin's home in New Mexico, and they all converge there for this dinner table scene that is one of the funniest things I ever saw. I mean, if you've got a certain sense of humor, if you like, I can't think of, Woody Allen, I guess, Wes Anderson maybe, if you like that, you may like this movie as well. But anyway, it's a gem. It's got Richard Jenkins in it as well, and Josh Brolin. So it's got a pretty good well-known cast now. Flirting with Disaster, 1996. I found out that I have quite a few. I got several movies here from '96, so I think that was strangely enough, that wasn't a great year for great movies, but it happened to be a year that I thought with a lot of underrated movies. The next movie from '96 I'm going to talk about is 2 Days in the Valley. This was a movie that came out in the wake of Pulp Fiction. It was one of those movies that had like parallel, intersecting stories that kind of jump back and forth, different parallel stories, but they all kind of converge. So a lot of people wrote this off as a Quentin Tarantino wannabe. It's not. I think it's actually, it's got some similarities the way it's directed, but it's more like a Robert Altman movie, I think, actually, than a Tarantino movie. It happens to take place in the San Fernando Valley, and it's about a whole bunch of different people during 2 days, 48-hour period, and there are these different things that happen. I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but it involves basically there's a hitman who's sent to assassinate a guy who happens to be married to a Olympic hopeful, and they get involved in one story, and there's another story about a guy who's got kidney stones, and he collapses, and he's got his assistant, and they all converge. I can't even describe the plot to you. There's just a lot. It's another movie that's got, all the characters kind of come together towards the end of the movie, and it's a very satisfying movie, very stylishly directed. The director is John Hertzfeld, who I believe was a movie critic and an author, novelist. I think he only made 2 movies, and this was one of them. And it's got a great cast: Danny Aiello, Jeff Daniels, Terry Hatcher, James Spader, Eric Stoltz, Charlize Theron. I believe this was Charlize Theron's first movie. So you're going to see, Reese Witherspoon's first movie if you follow my list, and now you can see Charlize Theron's first movie. Anyway, really good movie. Do check it out. Continuing with 1986, The Cable Guy. This is a movie, the only movie of the era that I could stomach by Jim Carrey. I was about to say Steve Carell. Sorry about that. Jim Carrey. I mean, I like Jim Carrey. I thought The Mask was amusing. I thought Dumb and Dumber was amusing, but I wasn't a huge fan of those movies. This is the movie that I like, because I think this really brought the Jim Carrey that was hilarious from In Living Color. That really weird, funny, strange character all those different characters he played on In Living Color, like Fireman Bob and all of them. I mean, he's really a chameleon. He can pretty much do anything. In this movie, he plays this this guy who's a cable guy, and he's obsessed with old 70s and 60s, 70s, and even 80s TV shows and movies. He's got like this encyclopedic knowledge of all that. And he tries to befriend this guy played by Matthew Broderick, who hires him to install the cable in his home. And to say that the cable guy becomes clingy is an understatement. It's, you know, it's kind of, a lot of people may call it creepy because he's basically is a stalker in this. Jim Carrey's character is a kind of a stalker, but he also ends up having some real psychological problems. And it is a comedy. It's a very dark comedy. It's directed by Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller had a pretty big year in '96. He appeared in Flirting with Disaster, and he wrote and directed The Cable Guy. So I think it's my favorite movie that Jim Carrey did. Go ahead and shoot me. I think it's really a fun, interesting, and a very intelligent movie. Okay, last movie from '96. This is called Freeway. Another movie with Reese Witherspoon, strangely enough, and that was not my intent to go up there and just pick, you know, Reese Witherspoon movies out. This is another movie that could be considered, you know, a Quentin Tarantino ripoff or homage or whatever you want to call it. But it's very much its own movie. It's basically a kind of a white, kind of a trashy version, an adult trashy version of Little Red Riding Hood. And it stars Reese Witherspoon. This was, I think, she made a couple other movies after The Man in the Moon. I think she made a Disney movie, and then she made Fear, this movie with Mark Wahlberg, where she played like this girl who gets involved with this psychotic played by Mark Wahlberg, which was also from 1996. I didn't pick Fear. I thought about Fear because I thought that was actually a good movie, but I picked Freeway instead because I think this one's got more rewatchability. There's just a lot going on in this. It's set up just like the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale, but it's very much violent, adult. Kiefer Sutherland, he plays the wolf character. His name is Bob Wolverton. Yeah, there you go, Bob Wolverton. And he pretends to be a child counselor who basically picks Reese Witherspoon's character up. She's hitchhiking. She leaves this trailer trash environment. She was living with her drug-addicted mother who kept getting arrested, and her stepfather, who was very abusive, you know, physically and sexually. A stepfather, though, not a father, but a stepfather. So they didn't cross that line, thank God. But anyway, Freeway. Kiefer Sutherland ends up, of course, being this real, you know, this wacko. And there's some moments in this movie that are so far out that I can't even describe them. It's very satisfying. Brooke Shields is in this movie. She plays Kiefer Sutherland's Bob Wolverton's wife, Brooke Shields, and she's they're all having a real good time. You could tell that they enjoyed making this movie because it just lets them let loose with just really bad behavior. I mean, it's pretty horrific. Even for Brooke Shields' character, who's supposed to be this prim and proper conservative wife, is quite horrible in this movie. And it's also a black comedy. I forgot to say it's got a lot of laughs in it. Her laugh was no fairy tale. Her life was no fairy tale. That's for sure. Anyway, good one to see. Freeway, check it out. Okay, we're on to the final two. Okay, so I went back through those a little quicker than I thought, which is good. Okay, somehow this one ended up at the bottom of my stack. I don't know how, because this movie came out in 1993. This is a movie called Red Rock West. I don't know how, okay, I didn't put them in order, obviously, but this is from '93. This is Red Rock West. This is actually a double feature DVD that I have here. We're going to concentrate on this movie. This is a Nicolas Cage movie that came out in '93, and it had a very interesting release. It was released in small towns very quietly in 1993. Didn't do any business at all. Columbia Pictures decided to withdraw it and immediately put it out on VHS. This is before DVDs came around, so VHS. So a lot of people, for the first time they saw this movie, they actually saw it on VHS. However, there was an art house movie theater, I think in New York or LA, that liked it so much that they got a film print of it and showed it in their art house theater, and it played there for a couple of months. And they repeated that formula in major cities throughout the country, in college towns. And this Red Rock West played in DC in an art house theater called The Key. Anybody who remembers the old movie theaters in DC, you probably remember The Key. And it played at the Key Theater for a couple of months. And I saw it there. And I'm glad I saw it there and not on video, because watching it on VHS, it's not the same. You got to see some movies in the theater. This movie is a modern film noir. It's very similar to a Coen Brothers movie. It has a very interesting vibe, very similar vibe to Blood Simple as some other movies, but it's its own movie. Directed by John Dahl. He made a series of movies starting in 1989 that were kind of about femme fatales and film noir homages. The movie he made in 1989 was called Kill Me Again with Val Kilmer and Joanne Wally Kilmer, his wife at the time. And then he made Red Rock West, and then he made one in 1994 called The Last Seduction, which was also kind of an art house movie. Anyway, Red Rock West is basically about, it's a case of mistaken identity, and it's basically about a guy who, it's a story we've heard 100 times. We've seen it numerous times in movies going all the way back to the 1940s, about a guy who hires this stranger to off his wife because he believes his wife is being unfaithful. I mean, we've seen that before, but he does it, John Dahl does it in a very creative way. And it's called Red Rock West because that's where the movie is set. It's a little town in Wyoming, and Nicolas Cage's character, he keeps trying to get out of Red Rock West, and he keeps on pulled back to it. He keeps going back there. It's a black comedy. So, and it's got some great performances in here. Dennis Hopper, after Blue Velvet, Dennis Hopper, played a lot of psychos who happen to be funny, and he plays a psycho who happens to be funny in this movie. It's also got Lara Flynn Boyle in it. She plays the femme fatale. She's very, very good. She's got the mannerisms down, very icy, but sympathetic when she needs to be. Good performance by her. She's very underrated. I haven't seen Lara Flynn Boyle in a lot of movies, but the movies I've seen her in, she's good. And J.T. Walsh, he plays a real slippery guy in this. If you know him, if you know anything about movies from the 1990s, you know who J.T. Walsh is. He always plays kind of like either these uptight federal agent type characters, or he plays slimy, sleazy people, and he's a slimy, sleazy person in this. Very good movie, Red Rock West. And it's hard to pronounce. Try saying that 3 times. Red Rock West. Red Rock West. Check it out. Okay, and the last movie, 1999. And again, I am not a creepy person when it comes to Reese Witherspoon, I promise you. But I have to include this movie, Election. And this is a movie that was released by MTV Studios in 1999, if you can believe that. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were expecting this to be sort of like 10 Things I Hate About You, or one of these movies, that was really aimed at that audience. And it wasn't. This was a very intelligent movie about politics in high school. And anybody who's been to a public high school remembers all the different elections that they had, for class president and whatnot, class representatives and whatever. And this character played by Reese Witherspoon, her name is Tracy Flick, and she's basically a psycho. She's sort of like her character in Freeway, but very more polished, not trashy at all, very kind of uptight, conservative. And she's very, very ambitious, but so ambitious she becomes really unglued. And Matthew Broderick, another movie with Matthew Broderick on this countdown here, he plays this, kind of this uptight, and he's not really uptight, he's just, a no-nonsense history teacher who just wants to teach these kids about history and democracy. He's big on democracy and teaching kids about the 3 branches of government and all that. And he also is involved with the student election process in this movie. He ends up kind of waging a war against Tracy Flick because he really doesn't like her. He just finds her to be everything that's wrong with America's youth. So they engage in this battle with each other, and it's quite amusing. There are a lot of other things going on in the periphery of this movie. There are 2 other individuals who end up running against Tracy Flick because she starts the movie as running unopposed. But Matthew Broderick's character, because he's a history teacher, he believes in democracy, he can't have her run unopposed. So he gets 2 others, or actually 1 other, then a 3rd person that runs. It turns out to be, it's another one of those movies that has a real build-up to kind of, not really farce, but just very sophisticated, laugh out loud, not your normal MTV movie. And I'd be really wondering, I would wonder how, because I was an adult, I was a full-grown adult when this movie came out. But this, if you were a teenager in 1999 and you saw this movie thinking it was going to be like Varsity Blues or something that was popular that year, and you saw this instead, I wonder what they thought. You got to wonder. Because there are laughs. There are some really funny moments in this movie. that are very relatable. I'd like to think that high school students back then did get it. I'm presuming they did, because it's now on Criterion. This is not a Criterion edition of this movie, but it is on Criterion. It's directed by Alexander Payne. Alexander Payne, of course, went on to make movies like About Schmidt and Sideways and The Descendants and Nebraska, and most recently he made a movie called The Holdovers. So he doesn't make a lot of movies, but the movies that he makes, I think there's only one movie in this entire list that I really didn't care for, and that was a movie he did called Downsizing. I didn't really care for that. But everything else he's done, including Citizen Ruth. Citizen Ruth was actually his first movie that came out in 1996. And I could have picked that, but I had enough movies from 1996. So this is Election, worth checking out. Let's go do a quick review. 1999 Election, 1996 Freeway. This is from, let me tell you the release. This is Republic Pictures, but I'm sure you can find it on some other distributor. The Cable Guy. This is The Cable Guy, you know, a really great Jim Carrey movie. 2 Days in the Valley. This is a recent release, by the way, on Blu-ray. Kino Lorber put this out on Blu-ray about 2 years ago, so it's worth getting. I had it on DVD at one time, but I think I sold my DVD, or I gave it to somebody. I never got it back, so I ended up getting the Blu-ray. Flirting with Disaster. I think this is available on Blu-ray now. This happens to be a DVD copy of it, though. Red Rock West from 1993. So I'm trying to go in order. The other movie on here, by the way, is Adaptation, which came out in 2002. So that's not really a 90s movie. The only reason they have this on a 2 for, I think, is probably because they both have Nicolas Cage in it, and they're both good. Adaptation is a good movie if you've never seen that. Bob Roberts, great mock documentary. Hear My Song, wonderful movie set in England and Ireland. The Man in the Moon, the first Reese Witherspoon movie I discussed, and of course the great Joe versus the Volcano. So do yourself a favor, check out one of these gems from the 90s. I may do one for the first decade of the 2000s. I don't know if I have a lot of movies in physical media from that decade, but I might. If I do, if I happen to grab a couple, I'll do another video on that, but that won't be for a while. So I hope you enjoyed this, and also bringing it all back home just so I can include at least one CD on this. See you next time.